We're here to talk about Tainan Dalpra, Diego Pato, J-Rod, Abate, Fellipe Andrew, and all of the guys who are going to be taking part in the Polaris event that's in the UK on Saturday. I believe the main card kicks off at 6:30 UK time and is on Fight Pass, and there are prelims on before on YouTube. We're going to focus on the main card matches. Who are we? I'm Ross. I'm joined by Calum, and we're going to go through the matches in order of ones we're least confident in predicting through to the ones that we're most confident with our predictions. So, Calum, what's the first match from the Polaris show you would like to talk about?
Yeah, the two that are first up in the main card, I think they're the biggest toss-ups. We'll just go with the first card. The first match is on the main card, which is Cammy Donnelly versus Dillon. Cammy is a Scottish grappler. Dillon is English. I think for our American viewers, Dillon is a kind of catch wrestling character. I think that's where he's had most of his grappling experience, but he has done a lot of jiu-jitsu in the past as well, but very much that catch wrestling style. And then Cammy Donnelly trains with B-Team quite a lot of the time, so he's got a very leg lock heavy style and got silver at European trials. I think for this one, likely to see Cammy on his back. I don't think he'll be able to compete too much in the wrestling department with Dillon. I think Dominic's going to have a significant advantage in that area. And then it's just going to be a question of whether Cam can get a hold of Dominic, I think. I'm thinking back to one of the Polaris Grand Prix quite a few years ago where Dillon had a match with Ross Nichols, who was very leg lock heavy back then, and Ross wasn't really able to get a hold of him. Dominic was diving over for Kimura traps and things like that, which I think he will likely do in this match again. And seeing Cammy struggle with those kind of opponents in the last trials that he lost in the first round to someone adopting some similar tactics later on in the match. So I think if Cammy can get a hold of his leg, he can definitely submit him. I think he can submit most people in that weight class in the world. If he gets to those sort of positions, it's just going to be a question of whether he can get there.
I think if Cammy could get to top position, I'd really like to see his passing. I know that's something he's been working on recently. I just think against Dom, and with Dom's wrestling, it's going to be hard to get to top position for Cammy unless the threat of the leg attack is so severe that Dom goes to his back or butt to defend it. Or we could see Cammy going to the back of a leg attack. But I would think most of the match is going to be Dom trying to go over Cammy's legs, go airborne, look for Kimura traps, look for attacks on the neck, etc., and then Cammy trying to go underneath and attack Dom's legs. So from that point of view, you're right, it is a bit of a toss-up. I could see Dom winning a decision based on how Polaris score the match. We put a huge emphasis on pushing the pace, initiating exchanges, taking risks, but also I could see Cammy scoring a submission with a leg lock. So what about the other match that you highlighted there? Jed against Julian Espinosa.
Yeah, Jed's been a bit all over the place with where he's decided to compete weight-wise the past year or two. He typically would compete around the 77 kilo division for ADCC and then the middleweight division for IBJJF. Obviously, he's known for taking on some bigger competitors at times. He would usually stick around that weight class. And then last couple European trials, he jumped up to 88, and then he did one of them at over 99 kilos as well. And now he's decided to come down in weight. I know that he's publicly expressed that some of the guys at 66 he thinks he can beat. I think he's had a bit of a beef with Ash Williams in the past, so I think maybe he thinks that that division will suit him a bit better or will be a bit easier for him to take on some of those guys. So he's dropping down in weight, and I think he's got the hopes of maybe taking the title at the lower weight class now that Mateusz Jasinski's taken it off him at 77. So interesting thing about this, Julian is very well rounded, he's very athletic. He has won black belt Nogi Europeans, IBJJF, and I think silver at Pan Ams as well, beating some really good names. He's beaten Sam McNally, who's on this card, and he's beaten Tom Halpin, so those are some pretty big names in that weight division. I think what's interesting though about Jed is when he was competing slightly heavier, he would have that big advantage of being very explosive and fast and able to snatch up choi bars and leg locks in an instant. Be interesting to see how that carries over to a lighter division, especially with a guy like Julian, who's very fast and explosive in his own right and very well versed in all those attacks. So be interesting to see if he can snatch up those same attacks with the same sort of pace and unpredictability, or whether that's going to be not as big of a weapon for him, given the speed will be a bit more comparable. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that match. Probably favour Julian in the match slightly. I think Jed's a bigger name, but just Julian's a lot more proven in that weight class. There's a few question marks over how Jed's going to carry over, given that it's the first time we're seeing him in this smaller weight category.
I think some people looking at this match who know Jed's game would think Jed has the edge in leg locks. But Julian's a fantastic leg locker, and if you go on his Instagram, you can see plenty of evidence of that. In particular, the entanglement he's called the Costa Rican switch, which is a real bind once you're stuck in it, and he has loads of finishes from there. So if it becomes a battle on the legs, I wouldn't say Jed's heavily favoured there. I'd say like Jed's very skilled there, and he has a lot of wins from there as well, but like don't sleep on Julian in that position. And like you've highlighted, I think Julian's got the edge in the other areas. He's very well rounded. So I would lean towards Julian in this one, but because of Jed's submission threat, like he could pick up the win. In the spirit of Polaris, let's split this up into 3 stanzas. So we've done the first 2 matches that we think are the tougher ones to call. Then we'll go into the middle section where we're leaning more towards one grappler winning over the other. And then we'll go into the last section where we're heavily favouring people. The reason I say that is for guys who are not familiar with the Polaris rules, then most of the matches are over 10 minutes, and they split the match into 3 stanzas where the judge picks one guy. So you might be familiar with that kind of thing from the Flow Grappling events, who's number 1. And then the super fight is 15 minutes, and that's 3 5-minute blocks. And the judges favour sub-attempts, pushing the pace, initiating exchanges, taking risks, and they really don't like stalling. And there's also a stalemate rule in Polaris, where if the referee thinks the action's at a stalemate, he can, doesn't matter where it is, could be side control, could be mount, he can reset the position and make the athletes go at it again. So, middle section, let's pick a few matches that we think, like, one guy's probably likely to win, but, like, we're not super confident we're going to put a load of money on it. So, which ones do you want to talk about now?
Talk about Sam McNally versus Cole Abate. This one, I think people maybe favour Cole being the up-and-comer and potentially the bigger name, but this match is going to be in the gi, just to highlight that. And as far as Cole at black belt, he is a little bit unproven. He is coming back from an injury. The rumour has it that Pato broke his shin in training. I know it was some sort of leg injury, but that's kind of what's going through the grapevine at the moment. So hopefully he's fully recovered from that. But we saw him return to competition this year. In Worlds, he lost his first round match just by an advantage point. So is largely unproven at black belt. In the gi, I know Sam McNally has never won a major in the gi, but I think he got bronze at IBJJF European, so can argue that's more than Cole, although Cole has some very impressive achievements at coloured belt in the gi. If you were to compare them in no gi, I mean, Cole got put out first round of ADCC, Sam McNally got a couple matches in, so you'd maybe favour Sam in that match. Question marks around this one just because we've not seen too much of Cole at black belt in the gi, not seen too much of him since his injury, to be honest. Kind of being on the down low. I'd probably favour Cole slightly, just coming from the camp that he's coming from, seeing the things that he's done the past few years. And then obviously he's a very young athlete, so it's reasonable to presume that his ability is just going to kind of skyrocket in the next few years, growing into his adult body and into his black belt game. Although Sam is very good, very well rounded in it of himself, so I'd probably favour Cole slightly in this, but I don't think it's a massive favourite either way.
No heel hooks in the gi, so I am not surprised to see Cole, as he finds his way back into competition after that injury, doing a gi match. Part of the Art of Jiu Jitsu contingent that is coming to the UK, we have Cole, Tainan Dalpra, Diego Pato, and recent signing to AOJ, Fellipe Andrew, all on the main card at Polaris, and all from Art of Jiu Jitsu. So awesome to have guys from probably the best gi jiu-jitsu team in the world right now, competing in the UK on Saturday. And for your analysis, I would agree. I'd be leaning towards Cole. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Sam could win. I would think, though, that like Cole's pretty skilled where Sam's good. So Sam is good at taking the back, but then Cole trains with some of the best back takers in the world. So it'd be unlikely that he would get caught unawares there, I think. So I'd be leaning towards Cole, but yeah, interesting to see how he competes after some time out. Not really seen him compete since his injury, I don't think. I haven't seen him compete anyway, so. Well,
he did Black Belt Worlds, but he got put out in the first round, so I don't think it's on much people's radar, to be honest. He's not made a big run since his injury, that's for sure.
Okay, well, hopefully this is the start of Cole coming back into the elite scene. Which match next, Calum?
Talk about Fellipe Andrew versus Davis Asare, which this one, it's a bit confusing, this main card. Some of them are gi, some of them are no gi, but I believe this is a no gi match. So Fellipe, we've seen him compete in the gi before, prior to like CGI a little bit, but was largely known as a gi athlete, and obviously his performance in CGI is very much on people's radars now, especially people that hadn't watched him in the gi. I think a lot of people will know who he is now. Given that performance, would definitely have him as the favourite. Getting second at CGI over 80 kilo division, he looked great on that day. Just ran into Nicky Rod in the final, who looked amazing the whole day. I think Fellipe will probably have a size advantage in this, just given that Davis competes at 77 kilos for ADCC, and then Felipe's gi weight is usually heavyweight, which is like 90 plus kilos. So I would assume Fellipe is going to be a little bit bigger than him in this match. I think Davis could potentially snatch a heel hook up, but in every other department, he could potentially compete on the feet with him a little bit, just given how much effort his camp puts into the stand-up these days, although Felipe's stand-up is very good as well. I think he's going to have a hard time passing Felipe's guard. Definitely favour Fellipe in this match. Davis, like I say, could surprise us coming out with a heel hook or something like that, but I think Fellipe is showing that he is pretty well versed in those sort of attacks as well, getting one of his wins at CGI himself via heel hook. So given his recent performance and just overall grappling pedigree, to be honest, even if he hadn't done that at CGI, I'd probably favour Fellipe, just given all the stuff that he's done in the gi. And we've seen as of late how much of a carryover that can have with these high-level gi athletes coming over. So definitely going to go with Fellipe in this match, though could potentially see Davis snatching something on him.
I believe guard pools are not penalised in Polaris so long as you have connections. So if Fellipe wants to go to the ground, then he's not going to get a negative penalty point like in other competitions. So I can see Fellipe pulling guard. And then, yeah, he's fantastic from the guard. Like you've mentioned a few times before, like just because it's no-gi, it's not really a problem for Fellipe when it comes to his amazing triangle choke. Like he's been able to use double wrist control, much like he would use double sleeve control to shoot triangles on people. So like that is a huge threat. If your head's in the range of his ankles being able to like lock together, then you can get snatched in a triangle. And then like Davis coming from the new wave camp, good on the legs, but like just that straight ankle lock that Fellipe has in his back pocket. Up there with the best in the world at finishing that. So yeah, I would lean towards Fellipe. He did look really good at CGI, so we know he's in good form. And yeah, if he takes the wrestling out of it as well, if he chooses to play off his back, then I think Davis is going to have a hard time passing the guard, and then Felipe's got that couple of submission threats that are like a nightmare to deal with. So yeah, I'd lean towards Fellipe. Right, 3 matches left. Where are we going?
Let's talk about Pato versus Ash Williams, which is going to be in the gi. Thankfully, that's going to add a different dynamic to it because we saw this match recently, of course, in the first round of the 66 kilo division at ADCC, where Pato got a decisive victory over Ash, which I don't think was a surprise. This is obviously a different dynamic. Don't see Ash compete in the gi much. However, we saw him beat one of the Miao brothers. I don't know if it was Paolo. I think it was Paolo and not Xiao. That was in Polaris a while ago. So, you know, you've shown that you can compete with these guys in the gi. I think, especially how it will be scored compared to IBJJF, that'll potentially give him a slightly higher chance as well. But I think Pato will be a heavy favourite in this when you take into consideration how their match went at ADCC, and then given the fact that Ash is primarily no-gi competitor and Pato is pretty evenly split between gi and no-gi and is a reigning gi world champion. I think putting your money on Pato will be a relatively safe bet going into this match.
It'd be interesting to see how Pato's recovered after ADCC, though. It wasn't that long ago, and he did have a heavy load across the 2 days. So there's a question around about that, and will he be as sharp as he was a couple of weeks ago when he was in the ADCC? It being in the gi's interesting because the heel hooks are out, and then Pato has amazing footlocks, but Ash has amazing footlock defense.
Yeah, he's got strange feet, the kind of angles he can point his toes at. It just, I've seen him being submitted with knee bars. I think Gabriel Souza submitted him with a knee bar, but as far as things like heel hooks and straight ankle locks, when you have to get some sort of bite on a foot, Ash seems to be next to impossible to submit with those kind of things. So might see that ruled out as one of Pato's best usual weapons. But I mean, Pato's amazing positionally as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him pass Ash and just dominate him positionally in that match. Yeah,
because a lot of the highlights we see Pato hitting submissions, but then like you look at ADCC, he did really well when he got on top of Baby Shark in the final.
Well, yeah, dominated him with a positional game too.
So, yeah, Pato, I would say, is deservedly got the favourite status in this. It's a 15-minute match. I believe it's the only super fight on the card. Let's go in that length. Be interesting to see if like Ash can stay out of danger for the 15 minutes. I would say, like, based on the criteria, I could see Pato having more of the sub attempts and initiation of exchanges and stuff like that in the match. Maybe Ash will be able to counter out of something because he is durable. But I think, yeah, given that is how it's scored and Pato having more of a threat to finish any submission, I would say he's favoured. Now, we're definitely into the last stanza here where we're like leaning more heavily towards our favourite in these last two matches. So why don't we talk about J-Rod's match next?
Yes, J-Rod's opponent, Mohammed. I'm not going to attempt his last name and make a fool of myself, but we'll just refer to him as Mohammed. So he's probably the athlete on the main card I know the least about. Look at his Instagram profile. I had actually seen some highlights of him before circulating around the Irish and UK Jiu-Jitsu scene. He's coming out of SBG Ireland. Also saw a clip of John Kavanagh talking about him, giving him some high praises, comparing him to Gunnar Nelson. The highlights that I saw of him was very impressed. He's a big guy. He moves very well. Very nice, fluid guard passing. Given his name, not to kind of profile him off of his name, but the names tend to elicit like a wrestling background. That's what you think of looking at those kind of guys. I really don't know if that's the case or not. If he does have that, that will really serve him well in this match against J-Rod. If he doesn't have that, I think he's going to have a much harder time. He is relatively unknown as well, and then J-Rod, a massive name coming off of silver at ADCC, so definitely think J-Rod's going to be a heavy favourite. If Mohammed does have some wrestling background from that part of the world, that's going to put him in much better stead for this match. And if he can get on top, his guard passing looks really good. I just think if he doesn't have that background, he's going to struggle to get there. And even if he does, Jacob is a very good wrestler in his own right. So definitely a heavy favourite towards Jacob, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how Mohammed rises to this match.
I'll have a go. Avtarhanov.
Doesn't sound too bad when you say it out loud.
Now, the reason I'm going for that, Avtarhanov, is because you were highlighting where his name suggests that, you know, his background lies. And, heavy wrestling pedigree, potentially. So, a lot of the highlights I've seen online are really well-rounded.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think as well, like, John Kavanagh, head coach at SBG Ireland, was saying that one thing Mohammed has is just like, why he was comparing it with Gunny. One reason why he was comparing him to Gunny is because of Mohammed's chill, his zen-like status in tough positions, and like if it gets scrambly with J-Rod and stuff like that, like I don't think he's going to panic and make like a crucial error. He's also like quite floaty, like Gunny. Like being compared to Gunnar Nelson is high praise indeed. I mean, I don't know, like if you're near to grappling, like you might not have seen Gunny grapple before he went to UFC, but his ceiling was probably world champion level, right? Whether it be gi or no gi, like he was amazing. Like, and love to see him grapple again, like once his MMA career's finished. But any highlights of Gunny you can see, like definitely seek them out. So being compared to him, high praise indeed. John Kavanagh is Gunny's coach as well. That's maybe why he's, you know, making the comparison. But yeah, G-Rod, it's hard to bet against him just given how well he looked at ADCC. And I think that was definitely like the most improved version of J-Rod like we've yet seen.
Yeah. Well, in one 10-minute match, I'm pretty confident J-Rod can pretty much sprint for a full single 10-minute match. So you mentioned Mohammed being very calm and comfortable in bad positions, which would maybe favour him in a 20-minute match and maybe allow J-Rod to gas himself out. But like I say, I'm pretty confident J-Rod can just go full pelt for that 10-minute stint.
Yeah, he's going to be... If you are able to withstand like his pressure and stuff like that and not submit to it, not wilt to it, that's one thing. But trying to get a hold of J-Rod and impose yourself on him is going to be really, really difficult. So I just think like J-Rod will have like the better of the initiation of action and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And that will really rack up. If he is to get a submission, it would probably be by getting to the back and getting a choke. But like you said, given Kavanagh's analysis of Mohammed, like maybe it'll be hard to get the finish if J-Rod gets the back, but I could see him getting the back in the match and getting the win. And then we have one last match to talk about, so I guess this is the one that you feel most confident about predicting.
Yeah, I mean, any of the last three you could potentially interchange. Tarik as well is like no slouch, especially in the gi compared to Ash. He's probably more experienced, does more of the majors and whatnot. It's just Tainan of his generation is definitely one of, if not the most dominant athlete in the gi. So we've seen this match as well in the past. There's not much to suggest it's going to go any differently. Tainan's looked amazing, even though last time around at Worlds didn't go his way, but just in general, Tainan is Tainan. Wouldn't be surprised to see him work in some other areas of his game. Typically see him do that in some of the IBJJF regional opens or super fight shows where there's not as much on the line and he maybe doesn't have as high regard for his opponent's grappling caliber. See him mess around with some different things. So we might see some gator rolls or some other stuff that he might experiment with. But yeah, I mean, if wants to win this match, just put on his normal game. I just don't see much Tarik's going to be able to do. I mean, Tarik's obviously got his own game and his own dangers to present towards Tainan. If he gets a hold of his foot, he can definitely break it, but getting to that sort of position on Tainan's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, love watching Tarik compete. He's one of the most creative grapplers. Obviously, most well known for the Tarik Plata, but like you said, like his footlock game is absolutely savage. Taught a great seminar at SBG Aberdeen and showed off that footlock game. But being creative against Tainan Dalpra is really, really difficult. I think, yeah, the odds are heavily in Tainan's favour in any gi match. Like, he probably takes part in. Like, I'm not betting against him. Even a rematch against Jansen Gomez, I'd probably be leaning Tainan now. You know, so a couple of interesting things. Like you said, will we see Tainan being more creative? So will we see Tainan go into the position that he got disqualified for in the IBJJF Worlds? Because it won't be a DQ at Polaris, right?
No,
Because I know the heel hooks are out, but I don't think like any position like torquing the knee, etc. is out. So
yeah, well, that was only a rule made up the past like 5 years anyway, so I don't imagine Polaris has made that a rule in their event.
So I just wonder if Tainan fancies going into it, because it's clearly somewhere that like he was wanting to go to.
Yeah.
And yeah, one question about Tainan, as we're on the subject. How do you think he would have done in the ADCC if he'd have taken part?
I was wanting to speak about that. So J-Rod is the next match on the card after him, and then Tainan was able to win his WNO no-gi match against J-Rod that happened a couple months ago. Tainan, I thought, in one of his WNO post-match interviews, I thought he was alluding to the fact that he was, in fact, going to do either CGI or ADCC. I was quite disappointed to not see him do that, especially given the fact that J-Rod got silver. I think that 88 kilo division, with the work Tainan's been putting into his no-gi, I think he definitely could have won that division. Not saying it would be an easy task for him to beat Giancarlo, but I think it would have definitely been doable for him. So it was disappointing not to see him do either division. I think he would have done pretty well in under 80 for CGI as well. The likes of him versus Levi Nogi would be very, very interesting to see Tainan's passing against him. So disappointed to not see him do one of those two divisions. But yeah, for that under 88 division, and I think he probably could have made 77 as well, but I don't think there would have been much need to. But yeah, his potential at 88, I definitely think was to win the division.
Okay. Jits matchmakers, if you're listening, on one of our previous pods, we said coming out of ADCC and CGI, we needed to see Tainan against Nicky Rod. Here's another one for you. Tainan against Bedoni. I think that is a match.
Or Levi.
Or Levi.
The guard of Levi, I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think maybe you're wanting to see someone have a right good go at Levi's guard, so then you can work out like where the passing meta is.
Yeah.
Now, just on that subject as well, I did with my coach Casey on the last Oracle an analysis of no-gi meta, where it lies right now coming out of ADCC and CGI, and we looked at the wrestling game primarily. Now, we've had good feedback coming out of that, and we're going to definitely do 2 more metas, and that'll be Calum and I doing them, and we're going to look at the guard, and we're going to look at passing, and where that lies in the no-gi game coming out of ADCC and CGI. So stay tuned to the Oracle, subscribe if you want that kind of content. Now, last thing, if Tainan is to beat Tarik, how do you think it will happen?
You had suggested beforehand that you thought taking the back and going for a choke, that would be the most likely, I think, especially if this was in an IBTGF competition, but I've got a feeling he's going to experiment and play around a little bit more. So how he actually finishes, I don't know, because he might experiment more with his passing or his guard, say, and then just do one of his classic finishes. But just for a safe bet, armbar or choke from the back is probably going to be quite likely for Tainan, I think.
And if Tarik is to spring the biggest surprise on the card, footlock?
I think footlock would be most likely for him as well. I think, obviously, he's got the Tarik Plata threat as well, but I think that's harder to set up and get in on against Tainan. I think getting into his footlock game is probably going to be a bit more likely for him.
Okay, good. Well, that concludes the Polaris preview. We'll be watching the action, and we'll be back with a full review of the main card and maybe some highlights of the undercard if we see anything that we like the look of. And as I said before, we'll be back with some more analysis of the no-gi meta in the near future as well. So if there's anything you want us to have a chat about, let us know in the comments.